Number 7 on our Cache Valley Media Group's list of the top 25 Aggie football players for this year, Hale Motu'apuaka, the defensive lineman, who no doubt has already made a big name for himself in the world fire knife competition. He's the men's division champion 3 times out of Punahou High School in Honolulu, Hawaii. 6'1", 280 pounds. Now, all of a sudden, 14 starts last year, and he was involved in 2.5 sacks and 8 tackles for a loss, and a big part of the defensive front was terrific down the stretch when Utah State's defense started to make big plays. One of the real leaders over on the defensive side, and we're looking forward for a big year on the defensive front for Hale Motu'apuaka, who is number 7 on our list.
There he is, Hale Motu'apuaka, fire knife champion, and great presence on that defensive front for Utah State. So you have to be pretty good with your hands if you're swinging around fire knives, and that handwork comes in very handy when he's on the defensive line, repositioning offensive players and creating a push and a presence up front. I was mentioning this to you the other day. Whenever I went up to practices last year, and it's happening again this year, whenever I go up to do post-practice interviews, I almost always see Hale taking off his pads, taking off his jersey. He's shirtless, and he's like no one else is around, and he's going through drills alone, moving his hands, footwork, and he's always working on stuff alone. And I can't tell you how many times I've been up to do a post-practice interview, and I can always point out Hale, shirtless, somewhere off, doing his own thing, putting in the time to be a better player. And we really saw that continue to progress as the season went on last year, and why a lot of us have a lot of high expectations of what he can do and the impact he can have coming into this year.
Yeah, I'll be honest, the first time I was really exposed to Hale was back in 2019. I was looking back and I was rewatching the Boise State game. They lost like 21-56, I think is what my notes say. Not a very good game. And so there weren't a whole lot of players who did very well, especially on defense. You know, you put up or give up 56 points. Now I was looking at the defensive line like, all right, which players are getting blown the heck up and allowing all these yards? And then kind of later in the game, because Hale was a redshirt freshman that season. So it's kind of later in the game he got put in. I began noticing there was this one guy who was doing very well. He was stuffing his guy and just much more impressive than all of the other guys, some of whom I think ended up making like all-conference teams at some point in their career. I think there's one guy on that who maybe made it in like 2018, or was like a preseason all-conference guy on some teams. And Hale was like upstaging him. I was like, that's interesting. This guy looks really good. And it may have been against some backups, but it was kind of then where I was like, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy. Then sure enough, next few years, he's rising up the ranks and starting. I was like, yeah, I expected that. Because, I saw him all the way back then dominating as a redshirt freshman in some limited snaps. And now he's the leader on the interior defensive line, arguably one of the leaders of just the defense overall. He's obviously going to be a big part, of the run stuffing and even the pass rush to a degree, creating havoc on the interior offensive line.
Yeah, the senior, he's 6'1", 280 pounds. He's been with Utah State for a couple of seasons now, and just looking at how one of the things that I looked at for some of those guys, like how did they perform at the tail end of last season, especially guys that we knew were coming back, but did they show an ability to grasp the defense, continue to get better, and really impact the game? And Hale definitely is one of those guys that appear to be getting better and better as the season went on. And just his presence on that interior frees up what some of those other guys can do on the edges. There's going to be guys who are going to get more tackles than Hale. There's going to be guys who maybe get more tackles for loss than Hale. But when you've got an interior lineman who was credited for 8 tackles for loss, I mean, it's great when your guys up front are the ones that are making that push and making those tackles behind the line and making these disruptive for what an offense is trying to do.
Yeah, when your defensive tackles are actually making tackles, that is amazing. Because it means you're getting usually tackles for loss or very short gains. Because usually if you're a defensive tackle, especially in that one technique where you're lining up over like between center and guard, you're not designed to get tackles. You're not designed to make plays. You're designed to set up other players to make plays. You're designed to set up the linebackers, suck up blockers, and like I said, sometimes help the defensive ends. Keep the, when you get double teamed, you're trying to make both of those guys keep blocking you so that the second lineman can't push off and then go up and get a linebacker, because that frees up the linebacker to stop the running back for a short gain. So yeah, Hale only gets 26 tackles, typical for a decent defensive tackle. The 8 tackles for loss is actually really impressive, because usually that's defensive ends, maybe a few linebackers on blitzes. Only good defensive tackles are really racking up TFLs.
Yeah, so I really like Hale Motu'apuaka. Big personality, fun person to be around. He's been able to do a few things in the community to highlight his extracurricular activities, which are fun.
You said that almost as if it was a bad thing. It's like it's his extracurriculars, his really cool one.
I actually had Hale at number 10, so I may have put him a little bit lower than some others that we had on our list here, but he comes in at number 7 on our composite list of top 25 Aggies for this upcoming season.
See, I had him at 4. Ooh. So I kind of made up for your lack of faith in Hale, because I really like him. I really like him on the interior defensive line.